as she sat there folding clothes it was the summer after graduation, and Jennifer was up late packing for a camping trip with her friends. She had the window open as she sat there folding clothes when she suddenly saw a hand coming through the gap in the screen of her window. Jennifer screamed and the hand flew back. She was stunned, but it could have just been her younger brother pranking her. She got up and looked out the window and saw the figure of a man staring back at her. Jennifer ran into her brother's room but saw him there, playing video games. They called the police, who came and searched the area, but they found nothing. Officers warned her and her parents to lock the windows and doors, but the mother had a feeling that he would come back, and as it turns out, mother's intuition was right. She went outside and waited in the back porch, and after 20 minutes, she saw a man dressed in black in their backyard. He hid behind a tree and slowly worked his way towards Jennifer's window. The mother yelled something to the stranger and he took off running. Police came back out and again found no trace of him. Jennifer never opened that window again, not even the curtains. Her parents installed some motion detecting lights, and that seemed to be the end of that. About 6 months later, Jennifer and her friend got an apartment downtown together, excited as this was their first place outside of home and they were finally living in the city. The downside was that it was street parking only, and after a few weeks, Jennifer's car was broken into. Oddly enough, nothing was taken, but a single rose was sat on the passenger seat. This creeped her out for sure, but she vowed to be vigilant and safe. She always tried to park close to the entrance near the lights, but it was often difficult to get those spots and she would have to park farther away. Things quickly began escalating at this point. Jennifer's car was broken into at least once a week. Most of the time, a flower was left, but once a pair of men's underwear was there instead. And even more strangely, a bag of Tootsie Rolls, weird because it was her favorite candy. This made Jennifer wonder if the person knew her personally, and she started to become suspicious of everyone. There was a laundry machine in the basement of the apartment, and one day Jennifer went down to get a load that finished drying. As she started to fold, she realized that all her bras and panties were gone. By the time the first letter arrived, she had already started making plans to move elsewhere. The letter described a love for her that had been going on for years. He noted things that proved he had been watching Jennifer closely. Not long after, Jennifer was able to arrange for another friend to take over her lease, and she moved in with a new friend on the other side of the city. It was a secured building and had an underground parking garage that was only accessible to tenants. She felt more secure, and the extra money spent was well worth the peace of mind. Things were quiet for a few months, and then her roommate got a boyfriend. There was something odd about Ashley's new boyfriend, and her friends were wary of him from the very beginning. For one, he reached out to her. Another reason was that Matt was very good looking, and while Ashley was a wonderful person, she wasn't the type you would typically expect someone like him to date. Ashley was thrilled. She never had a boyfriend and really felt like he was her Prince Charming. Jennifer, however, thought he was weird and creepy the moment they met. She had deleted her Facebook account when the initial stalking began, but created a dummy account to learn more about Matt. It didn't look like he really knew any of his friends in real life. There were only pictures of himself, and the rest of the information was vague. Jennifer and her friends gently tried to discourage Ashley from seeing Matt. He technically hadn't done anything wrong, but it was just so strange. She would immediately get defensive and would shut the conversation down. Matt started to spend more time at the apartment, and Jennifer found herself finding any excuse to avoid coming home. One day she came back home from work and found Matt on the couch, alone, drinking a beer. Ashley had been called into work and she told her that he could just hang out. Jennifer had no desire to spend any time with him, so she grabbed the beer and a snack and headed off to her room and shut the door. About 30 minutes or so, he knocked on Jennifer's door and suggested they watch some TV and get to know each other better because they both loved Ashley. Not wanting to engage in conversation, Jennifer focused on the movie. But at one point, she glanced over to Matt, and he was staring at her with a smile on his face. Jennifer snapped at him and said, "What?" as he just continued to smile and said, "I just can't believe it." "Believe what?" He said nothing and went back to watching the movie. She had no idea what he was talking about, but the interaction had every hair standing up on her body. She excused herself and locked the door to her room. Another month or so went on, and Jennifer had managed to avoid being home for much beyond sleeping and showering. Matt practically lived there and had even brought a bunch of his things into Ashley's room. Jennifer didn't want to move again, but was beginning to look for other options. On Ashley and Matt's 6-month anniversary, there was a huge bouquet of flowers on the table and an already opened card propped up next to it. Jennifer was curious, so she opened the card and her heart started beating through her chest. Without even reading the words Matt wrote, the handwriting was exactly the same as the one her stalker had sent. Jennifer had kept them as evidence and dug them out of her desk for comparison. The handwriting was unique and identical. Matt was the stalker. Jennifer called the police, and as they were on their way, she called Ashley and asked her to come over, terrified to tell her the truth because she knew that her heart would be shattered. The police took a statement from Jennifer and went to Ashley's work to get more information from her and ended up breaking the news. Apparently, Ashley called Matt after and left a furious message even though the cops told her not to say anything, and he completely disappeared after that. There was no Matt or anyone matching his resemblance at the place he said he worked. Ashley had never been to his apartment because he said he would be staying with his friends while trying to save money for a trip to Europe. His family lived out of state, and she said that she had never met a friend of his because he said they had a falling out because he was choosing to spend so much time with her. It was all lies, and in the end, she was dating a stranger. For all they knew, Matt may not have even been his real name. He had left the duffel bag in the apartment that was full of gym clothes, but in one compartment, there were about 10 pictures of Jennifer. All were taken from far away with the exception of one of her sleeping. The sheets were current, so it had to have been at the current apartment before she started locking her bedroom door. A few pictures dated back to before the incident at her parents' house, which was further evidence that it was him as well. 2 pairs of missing underwear were there, and Jennifer shudders to think of what he did with the rest. There was also a Starbucks lid with her red lipstick marks, and a necklace she hadn't even noticed she was missing. The police never tracked him down. Jennifer accepted an opportunity overseas and got out of there. But ever since then, Jennifer deleted all her social media accounts. She became very low profile, looks over her shoulder wherever she goes, as part of her continues to worry if Matt will ever resurface again. Leah was a teenager living in New York. She was a competitive athlete in high school, and with recruiting season a year away, she was under tremendous pressure to perform well in her sport as well as in the classroom. She was struggling to keep up with calculus at the time, so her mother suggested that she get a tutor. Leah had been going to him regularly, probably 3 times a week for a month before she met Josh. Josh had the tutoring session after, and they would cross paths every week. It had never been more than a glance and a smile, as she was incredibly shy and terrified of boys. One day, her tutor had to change his schedule and decided to put them together. Leah was shocked and delighted when Josh started chatting with her afterwards and asked for her phone number. Eventually, they both began dating. Josh went to a Catholic school in another town, but because he lived in the same town as Leah did, he took the bus every morning from her school to his. This gave them most mornings together, and he was able to meet Leah's friends. She was a little taken aback when they didn't seem to like him. Leah realized that she's been spending less time with them and assumed they were just jealous that she had a boyfriend. As time went on, things got more serious in the relationship. And that's when things began to change. While they always talked regularly, Josh started getting over the top about staying in contact with Leah. He would make her stay on the phone with him all hours of the night until eventually her mom started taking her phone away before she went to sleep. This relationship also started taking a toll on her athletic career. She was too tired to spend extra time training and started to skip practices to see him, driving 30 minutes each way to his school. Eventually, Leah's friend sat her down and told her how unhealthy this relationship had become. She had isolated herself from them, and her entire free time was spent with Josh. At this point, Leah wanted so badly to end the relationship. She had fallen out of love with him, and college applications were approaching. She had been scouted by no less than 10 colleges, and her plan was to attend Brown University, her dream school. Josh's obsession with their relationship had taken a huge toll on his grades, and Brown wasn't going to be an option for him. Leah remembered telling him that was where she was planning on going, and he freaked out, saying that he would never get in, and he begged her not to go. At the time, she was also recruited by the University of Illinois. Josh applied there in hopes that she would ditch Brown and go to Illinois with him. But that was the final straw. Leah ended things for good with Josh, assuming that would be it. Because he would take the bus from her school to his every morning, she still had to see him. His friends who took the bus with him yelled disgusting words at Leah. Josh had spread a rumor that Leah had apparently cheated on him with a bunch of guys and then ended the relationship. Leah spent months getting nasty messages accusing her of having STDs and also saying some horrifying things. Unfortunately, deleting Facebook was what set off the stalker tendencies for Josh. He wasn't able to see her face online anymore, so he started calling nonstop and sending desperate messages telling Leah that he loved her. While all of this was going on, Leah and her team was set to win the high school championship in volleyball. Josh showed up while Leah was competing and they saw each other. This shook Leah so badly that she ended up losing the title for her team, and it made her furious and heartbroken. Leah ended up picking up his call that same night and screamed at him, telling him to never contact her again. But that's when the threats began. She got a call a few nights later from Josh. After he texted her, he had something important to tell her. Stupidly, she answered, and he began to say how he was going to kill her. He was going to show up at Leah's house when her parents were at work, holding a rope and a knife, and make her suffer like she had done to him. He eventually went on to say he was going to get her before she went into school because he knew exactly where she parked every morning, and her parents were never going to find him. But what Josh didn't realize was that she had recorded what was being said the entire time and had it taped onto her phone. Leah hung up when she felt he'd said enough. The next morning, she went into school extra early, much earlier than she figured he'd be there. Leah showed the school advisor the recording. She felt a deep-rooted shame as her mom listened to the recording like she had done something to bring this onto herself. The advisor was so alarmed that he told her to go to the police immediately. Leah and her mother sat in the police station all day explaining the story of her relationship with Josh and how it got to this point. The police then drove to his high school and arrested him while he was in class. As she was bringing food back to the police station for herself and her mom, she saw Josh in handcuffs, and he indeed looked like he wanted to kill her. Post-arrest, Leah got a restraining order against Josh, and he was sent to a mental institution for a short while. It's been 10 years since this happened. Leah moved across the country where this occurred, and she finally feels safe now that she's far away. But anytime she gets a blocked call or text from a number she doesn't know, a thought goes through her head that it's him. I was texting this girl I met through Tinder, and I finally asked if she wanted to go out for dinner. She replied and said yeah, so I picked her up and we got to the restaurant. Things were going well. It was our first time meeting in person. We started talking about our favorite shows, which led to the topic on movies. Nothing suspicious about this girl. At that moment, we decided to go to a theater after to watch Captain America Winter Soldier. She said there was a cinema nearby, but I wasn't familiar with the area, so I used the GPS on my phone and she helped me navigate. Once we got there, we started walking inside and I realized, oh, I don't have my phone in my pocket. I must have left it in the car. So I started to walk back to get it. However, my date kept insisting I just leave it in the car because we were going to miss the beginning of the film. I mean, it's true I didn't need to have my phone with me, especially since we're going to watch a movie. But for some reason, I was feeling very paranoid about it, and I just got this new phone about a week or so. We went back and checked the car for about 10 minutes, but I couldn't find it. I asked her to check her jacket and her bag, but she said it wasn't there. A couple parked next to us, so I asked them to ring my number because I couldn't find it, and would you believe, it started to ring, but it was obviously coming from my date's handbag. Very interesting. She took my phone out and said, oh, I must have missed it. I thanked the couple and locked my car, and as I turned back around, she was walking the other way, so I ran up to catch up and asked what was going on, but she was being very dismissive and was barely talking to me. That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. This woman was trying to steal my phone. If this had gone according to her plan, she could have just pulled the, oh, I need to go to the restroom excuse and left during the movie. There's a big chance that she's done this with other people in the past and will continue to do so in the future, and she's waiting for her next victim. So that was the last time I saw that woman, and I just drove home without her. See you later, thief. When I was in middle school, I was constantly made fun of and picked on, and that ridicule transferred to whenever I rode the school bus. So I started walking 3 miles to and from school every day. The path I walked on was pretty safe, mostly on a sidewalk and always on a busy road, with the last 2.5 miles being a straight shot directly to the school. Back then, there wasn't a stigma attached to kids being outside on their own, so this wasn't deemed unsafe or noticed by anyone. I lived alone with my father, parents being divorced, and my mother saw me on the weekends. He didn't see any harm in the walking, and my mother wasn't aware of this, nor that I was being picked on in school, so I continued for over half the school year. One day as I was going home, I saw a car pull up about 100 feet ahead of me. I thought to myself, that car looks familiar. Oh, nice, that's my dad. He's gonna drive me the way home. I started to jog up to the car, seeing him in the driver's seat, waiting patiently. His hair looks darker than normal today. Wasn't the inside of his car tan, not red? The thoughts left as soon as they entered, and I caught up to the car, opened the passenger side door, and started to get in. As I was tossing my backpack on the floor in front of me and swinging my legs into the car, thanks, Dad. Before I knew it, I had shut the car door and we began to move. This isn't my father. This man was much older, by at least 20 years. Hair obviously dyed black, and hands propped at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. The shirt he was wearing looked just like the one my father would have worn. A short sleeve collar button down, brick red with black and horizontal lines, not pressed but not too wrinkled either. He was smiling at me, which probably would have felt warm if it was coming from my grandfather, but instead it felt menacing. I heard a click and looked over at the door that had just been locked. I stared at the door for a moment longer, then turned and faced forward and completely froze, terrified. Hello, I saw you walking. I figured I'd come give you a lift. I didn't move or answer. Don't act scared, just act normal. His voice matched the smile, deceivingly friendly. We were roughly a mile away from home, and half a mile from the next turn needed to head in that direction. All I could concentrate on is how am I gonna get out of this situation? Are you on your way home? Home. Yes, I want to go home. Where's your house? I can take you back home. Feeling just slightly relieved, I told him to take the next right turn. I felt myself begin to breathe and I realized how tense I had been. My body relaxed slightly and I finally moved and wrapped my hands around my backpack straps. We started to come up on the intersection and I pointed ahead. The dotted line for the turn lane had begun, but he did not get over. Instantly, I tensed back up and my grip and my gaze on my backpack straps tightened. Don't act scared. Don't act scared. No, I really need to get back home. He swung the car into the turn lane and began to make the turn. Okay, see? Everything is going to be fine. He's taking you home. Are you sure? I'll make sure you get home before anyone realizes you're gone. Stay calm. Don't act scared. No, I need to get home now. My father is expecting me home right now. He's waiting. Okay, maybe next time. We can meet here at the same place tomorrow. Sure, yes, tomorrow sounds good. I just need to get home today. Now, my eyes were firmly trained on that if I just focused on the direction home, I would get there. The turn into my neighborhood was approaching, and I informed him again that pointing towards that direction. The next few moments were silent, though it was so loud in my head. Oh wait, he can't know where I live. No. What should I? You know, it's probably not a good idea that I drop you off right at your house. Your dad might see me and get mad that I gave you a ride home, and then we wouldn't be able to meet again tomorrow. I was able to appreciate the good fortune of my silent question being answered for me. My old neighborhood consisted of mainly apartments, but in the back were a block of townhouses, which is where I lived. If you were unaware of the layout of the complex, the townhouses might go unnoticed. He pulled over to the side of the road in front of the apartment building. He unlocked the door and I hurried out of the car. Backpack still in hand, I began to close the door behind me. So, see you here tomorrow, same time? I paused for just a second so I can get another look at the man. Still smiling, still terrifying. Yes, tomorrow. See you later. Don't run, don't act heck scared, I swung my backpack on the right way and briskly walked in the opposite direction of my house. I could hear the car still idling behind me, and it wasn't until I was able to turn off that road and leave his view that I heard him start to move. He had to drive up to where I was walking to turn around, and I glanced back as he was making an awkward turn. He caught my gaze and gave a slight wave before driving off. I turned my head and kept walking, and the moment I could no longer hear the car, I ran as fast as my legs and heavy backpack would let me. I ran around to where I could hide between two buildings and hid there for a while until I felt it was enough time passed to feel confident he was not driving back around looking for me. I ran the rest of the way home, keeping a lookout, making sure he wouldn't be able to see me through the backyard. I reached the front door, unlocked it, and almost spilled inside because I was moving so fast. It wasn't until I locked the door behind me that I felt safe. I was home. In the end, I told both my parents, and my mother forced my father to drive and pick me up from school for the remainder of the school year. My father didn't believe me and thought I made up the story to get out of walking to school. Well, it didn't matter. It was worth his disbelief and annoyance every day in the car, so I never had to meet that guy again. When Lacey was 20 years old, she worked as a delivery girl for a pretty popular pizzeria in her area. Initially, she worked the late morning to mid-afternoon shift, but when the guy who delivered the night shift ended up getting fired due to him losing his license because of a DUI, she was placed on the night shift instead. Lacey really didn't want this shift because you never know if people who order late at night actually want a pizza or if they have other intentions in mind. Unfortunately, her boss essentially told her if she wasn't willing to work the night shift, she was fired. Lacey wasn't exactly in a position to be out of work, so she reluctantly worked the shift. The first month went by without any issues. That was until she had to deliver a pizza to a house that just barely made it to their delivery radius. Lacey put the address in the GPS, and the house was located in a pretty suburban part of the city. She arrived at about 11 p.m. The block was extremely quiet, decently lit, and mostly littered with modern townhouses. But the house she delivered to was a duplex. Lacey rings the doorbell and waits for about 30 seconds. No answer. She rings it again and waits for another 30 seconds. Still no answer. She's standing there getting pretty nervous that something's about to go down, but thankfully a man opens the door. He looked like he was in his late 40s. Lacey tells him his pizza's here, and he just stands there, staring at her. She asked him if he was okay, and he responded by saying, "Yeah, I'm fine, sorry. I got off work not too long ago, and I'm zoning out a bit." He hands her the money, and she hands him the pizza. And as she's making change, he says, "You're really beautiful, you know that?" Not really thinking too much into it, Lacey thanked him for the compliment and gave him his change. She walked back to her car and finished the remaining deliveries for the night. A few days later, Lacey gets a delivery order from the same place. She heads over there around the same time as before and rings the doorbell. He answered the door very excitedly and said, "Hey, it's you again. How are you?" Lacey told him she was tired and can't wait to go home, to which he chuckled and said, "I know that feeling pretty well." As he's counting his money, he asks what her name is. Being tired at this point and not really thinking, she stupidly tells him her name. As Lacey was making change, he asks if he could have her number, as he'd love to hang out with someone as gorgeous as she is. Lacey's just standing there awkwardly for a few seconds before she said, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." He gets upset and says, "Oh, okay. I see." They stand there in silence before she tells him to have a good night and walks back to her car. He says nothing and still stands at the doorway staring at Lacey until he finally went back inside once she started the car. There was a pretty creepy vibe from this guy, and she even brought it up to her co-workers, and they also agreed it was creepy. Except for her boss, who overheard everything and claimed Lacey was making up stories to try to gain sympathy for having to take the night shift. A week later, there's an order from the same guy, and this is when it hits the fan. Lacey arrived at the house at around 10:30 p.m. As she's approaching the door, it quickly swings open to reveal the man, except this time he was wearing a suit. "Sorry if I scared you. I saw you out the window and figured I'd just open the door now so that you wouldn't have to ring the bell." Lacey was getting scared because there were no lights in the house, so he was sitting in the dark this entire time. And if so, why? He asked if she liked his suit, to which Lacey said yes. He then asks, "Would you like to go on a date with me tonight?" She once again tells him that she has a boyfriend, to which he chuckles and gets close to her and says, "There's no way a girl your age is in a serious relationship. If you go on a date with me, I'll show you how a real man treats a girl." He grabs the pizza box from her, throws it to the side, and grabs her by the arms. Lacey's officially losing her mind at this point and trying not to cry from the fear that was overwhelming her. She starts pleading with him, "Dude, please, I just want to go home. I don't want to go on a date." He just stares at her with the most sinister look and says, "I don't care. Get inside now. We're gonna have a good time." He starts trying to pull Lacey into the house and she's resisting as much as she can. After a bit of struggling, he lets go of one of her arms and starts grabbing something out of his pocket, which she presumed was a knife. Lacey used her free arm to punch him as hard as she could in the stomach. She quickly runs to the car, and as she gets in, he chases after her and tries pulling Lacey out of the car, holding the knife in the other arm, and yells, "Why are you making this so difficult?" She grabs a soda bottle from the cup holder and throws it at him, luckily hitting his head, causing him to let go. She slams the door, and then all of a sudden, he jumps right on the hood of the car and starts scratching and banging on the windshield. Lacey put the car in reverse and quickly backs out of the spot and reverses down the road with him desperately trying to hold on. He's banging on the hood, screaming, "Stop the car!" She turns onto the next road as swiftly as possible, and luckily he falls off the hood. Lacey slammed the gas to get as far away as she could from that disgusting man. In her panic state, she drove a couple blocks down the street and kept making turn after turn onto other side blocks as Lacey feared that she was being followed. Eventually, Lacey reached the red light and slammed on the brakes and just sat there at the intersection frozen from what just happened. She began crying and violently shaking. It dawned on her that she came so close to losing her life. Once the light turned green, she pulled over to the side and just sat there crying. Eventually, Lacey gets the energy to drive back to the pizzeria, and almost immediately after she walks in, her coworker knew something was wrong. She practically broke down in front of him and explained everything that happened. Lacey's boss even began apologizing profusely for what had just happened and for putting her on a night shift. He took her into the office and handed her the phone to call the cops. They arrive at the store and Lacey gives them their statement, as well as taking pictures of any marks on herself, as well as the scratches on the car from the encounter as evidence. Lacey drove home that night and collapsed on the bed and, strangely enough, managed to fall asleep. She quit her job the next day, and luckily a friend of hers managed to help her get a new job at a clothing store. As far as the psycho goes, 2 days later, Lacey received an update from the police. The entire duplex was owned by the guy's brother, who lived on the left side with his wife, and the man lived on the right side of the duplex. She learned that he had been in and out of jail constantly, at first for robberies and assaults, but later on it was for other crimes involving a minor. He had been released from jail about 5 months before this encounter. When they arrived at the house, he was long gone, and his family had no idea where he ran off to. But the police insisted they would find him, and police contacted Lacey and updated her on the case. Apparently, he fled to another city nearby and attempted to kidnap a teenager walking alone on the street. Luckily, someone was there at the right time and they were able to call the police, and the police caught him. He manages to flee and the police chase after him. He blew a red light near a busy boulevard and the van slammed right into the driver's side of his car. By some sort of miracle, the driver of the van only sustained minor injuries, while the psycho succumbed to his wounds long before the ambulance even arrived. Lacey thanked the officers for everything they did and for informing her, and she walked out of the station. Lacey walks down the street and is taking in everything she had just been told. She doesn't wish death upon anyone, but after hearing about him dying, there was a feeling of relief. She was relieved that he couldn't hurt anyone anymore and would never have to encounter him ever again. Who knows what would have happened to Lacey if he managed to pull her into the house that one delivery night. Max was a new college transfer student looking to rent out a room on Craigslist. Fortunately, he found a nice 2-bedroom apartment for cheap rent and close to campus, so it was the ideal spot. The girl who lived there was named Beth, and she was 29. She was tall with jet black hair and wore pale makeup. She seemed nice, although a little quiet, but she decided to let Max move in. During their first night living together, both of them went out for pizza, and that's when Max could tell there was something a little bit off with Beth. Throughout dinner, she kept telling him how much he looks like Shia LaBeouf. Max didn't know what to say, so he just shrugged it off with a thanks, even though he looked nothing like him. When they got back home, Beth asked if he wanted to see her room. Her walls were covered in posters of Shia LaBeouf. She even had printed out photos of him all over her mirror. She owned all his movies, and Max didn't know what to make of it. The entire night, Beth had been saying how much he looks like him, and now it's obvious that she's obsessed with the guy. A few weeks passed, and they never really saw each other that much. Beth would come home from work and practically run into her room and spend the whole night there. She had this creepy, high-pitched giggle, and Max would hear her giggling through the walls all night. What the hell could she possibly be doing? Occasionally, Beth would come out and talk for like 2 minutes, and she would always be slurring her words, so Max suspected that she was drinking a lot. Sometimes Beth wouldn't say anything, and she would just stand in the hallway and watch him in the living room. Max would turn around to see her and say, "Hello, Beth," and then there would be this long, awkward pause while she gave out her creepy, high-pitched giggle. It was uncomfortable being around Beth, and she gave him the chills. One night, Max woke up at around 2 a.m. because he heard what sounded like the front door being unlocked. He came out of his bedroom and all the lights were off, but he could still see Beth standing at the front door. She had her face against it, and she was turning the lock back and forth over and over again. And every time she turned the bolt, she mumbled Max's name. Max Parker. Max Parker. Max Parker. Seeing her standing in the dark, mumbling his name really freaked Max out, and it doesn't help that she kind of looks like the bigger version of the girl from Ring. Max quietly went back to his room and tried to sleep, but couldn't, and just stayed up the entire night. Another night, he was watching Gladiator, and she stumbled out of her room and turned on the living room light, which forced him to pause the movie. She then asked if Max wanted to hear about her ex-boyfriend. It was so random and sudden, but he just said sure, and then awkwardly sat back to listen to her. 10 minutes into her story, and she was so riled up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs about their breakup. Max was worried that the neighbors were going to call the cops, and she wasn't listening when Max was asking her to lower the volume. Amidst all of her screaming, one thing she said really freaked him out. She was in such a fit and yelled, "I'll slit his throat." Suddenly, Max had no idea what this girl was capable of. She was practically a stranger, and everything he had seen was becoming alarmingly disturbing. After a few more minutes, she told him thanks for listening, and she started doing her giggle again. Max got out of there pretty fast, and he had a pretty unsettled feeling about being in the house with her. And what's worse was that there was no lock on his bedroom door. He pushed the edge of his dresser in front of it to act as a little barricade. Max woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of his dresser scraping against the floor. Beth was pushing the door open. He turned on the light, shouting at her to stop, and he could see her through the opening of the door. She was so drunk and had this insane look in her eyes. Max yelled at her to go to bed, and you could hear her walk back to her room, and once again, there was no way he was able to fall back asleep. The next morning, when Max went out into the hallway, his heart dropped. He saw one of her steak knives on the floor by his door. All he could think about was how she was saying she would slit that guy's throat. Max confronted her about it, and she said she doesn't remember trying to push his door open. She says she doesn't even remember telling him about her ex. Max had enough. His lease was month to month, so he found a new spot and moved out. Not long after, Beth contacted him again. Max was at the movies, and when he turned on his phone, to his shock, he received over 40 text messages that she had sent him over the past 2 hours. They were all just insane texts that ranged from everything between "Hi, how are you?" to "I hate you." Max never responded, and he never heard from Beth again. However, he always wondered if he hadn't set his dresser in front of his door that night, would she have quietly come into his room and slit his throat? On one Friday afternoon, I got a call from my friend Sarah asking if I wanted to meet her and another friend Lisa at Dunkin' Donuts, as we hadn't seen one another in a long time. I got there after a 15-minute walk and found them sitting together, so I joined them. As we were chatting, I noticed that my sister Elena was sat at a table in the corner of the room with her friend Jess. I excused myself from the table and went over to my sister. Immediately, Elena whispered to me, "Don't look now, but the guy in the blue shirt, I think he's been following Jess and I." She told me that he's passed her table 5 times in the past 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, but he walks slower every time he passes them. I told them they were most likely being paranoid and there was nothing to worry about, but for their peace of mind, I offered to leave with them so they wouldn't feel as worried. I walked back to my table and explained the situation to Sarah and Lisa. Both of them laughed it off and assumed my sister was being paranoid as well. Literally about a minute later, I saw the man get up from his seat and walk towards the bathroom. My eyes followed him, and sure enough, he walked extremely slow past Elena and Jess. In fact, it was almost comical how obviously slow he became. Both Elena and Jess looked in my direction, and I nodded to show that I had seen him and walk slower. About 5 minutes later, I walked towards the restroom and I passed Elena and Jess and told them I was ready to leave whenever they were. They both agreed that they wanted to go now, so I said we could leave after I finished going to the restroom. Elena had come in her car, so she was going to give me a lift back. I was walking down the corridor back into the main eating room when Elena and Jess rushed towards me. I asked them what's going on, and they explained that another man had joined the strange creeper and that the men were both pointing and staring at them. We walked back to the eating area. I put my money on our table and explained to Lisa and Sarah that I was taking off and I would explain what was going on when I got home. We all got into Elena's car and left. After a 2-minute drive, we reached my house. Just then, I remembered that I had been meaning to return something I had borrowed from my mother, so I asked if Elena could drive me to my parents' house as she was going there anyways. I jumped out the car to get what I needed when my phone began to ring. It was Elena. She explained that a car had driven past and had pulled into a driveway. She said that the driver was the creep from Dunkin' Donuts. I looked out my window and sure enough, there was a car which didn't belong to the owner of the house parked on their driveway. I got the girls into the house and locked the door. I instructed Elena to take a photo of the car and the license plate and told Jess to call 911 and she would give the operator more information when I could. Elena took the photos and we sort of gathered around Jess as she was speaking to the operator. She had finished telling the story and I heard the operator assure us that the police would be on their house soon. A few minutes passed and there was a loud knock on the front door followed by a voice shouting, "It's the police!" We all did a sigh of relief as I went to open the door. Jess told the operator that the police were here and she hung up. Definitely something she shouldn't have done. I was in the process of unlocking the door when I thought to look through the spy hole at the top. I peered through and it wasn't a police officer. It was the same guy. I froze in fear and I didn't know what to say. "We didn't call the police!" Elena and Jess were both confused as to why I said this. "You have the wrong address!" I informed the girls that it was the creep at the door and not a police officer. Both were rightfully shocked and extremely scared, as was I. "We had a call, sir!" I was about to tell Jess to call the police again until I heard the sirens. "Sir, you have to let me in!" I heard the police pull up and some commotion outside. This time an actual police officer knocked on the door and I let him in. The police officers took the man into custody while another police officer took Elena and Jess into the dining room. Questioning. The man was found with a kitchen knife and some other weapons in the car. Everyone was relieved and thankful the police arrived on time. Who knows what could have happened if I didn't look through the spy hole first and accidentally let that man in our house.
Alright guys, that was it. So this was a bunch of scary stories. But anyways, bye.